Welcome back everyone. Today we are working on a new tumbler. This is going to be the spider tumbler. It's a little bit different from the other one because this I was trying to be as thin as possible, and this kind of like penalize the sculpting itself because you have to adapt it for like a flat surface. You can go really three-dimensional, but I think the result was still pretty good. There's going to be a lot of different techniques for texture, forms and whatnot. So I hope you're going to enjoy this video. Please like and subscribe to the channel and the videos, and leave me a comment, ask me anything that you want to know about the sculpt or my process. In videos I always try to cover as much as possible, and often I do techniques that I don't use necessarily every time, or I try many different ways to show how many different techniques and style you can have, and it's never just like one way to make something, you know. Is every time there's a different style or a different way. A lot is dictated by the clay, because different clays react to solvents of heat in a different way. So it was my intention to make this video full of everything, because the character, now let's call it character, the sculpt in this case is an insect, and an insect, if you see it very close, the level of details is insane. Obviously I'm not going to do something of that scale, but I wanted to make something that wasn't smooth, it wasn't simple, it wasn't just a couple of holes and a scratch and soften down and that's it. I wanted to represent in this video the almost infinite possibility that you have and the different ways that you can use to achieve the same goal. So it's gonna be a bit long, but I hope you're gonna enjoy and take something out of it. Like, not everything that I do needs to be that way. So if you're watching to learn and you see me doing a certain way and you get confused, this is what works for me. This is not necessarily what works for you. This is not necessarily what I'm trying to tell you, that you have to work in this way. All these videos are just a way that I use to share what I know and help who is trying to learn or doesn't have money to do like big courses, or universities, colleges that teach you this kind of stuff. So when I was younger, I always wanted to find someone that could help me and guide me and follow, or even just taking inspiration. At the time there was just MySpace, and I remember finding Steve Wang page on MySpace, and I started to bother him almost every week with questions, and how did you do this, how did you do that, how long did it take to sculpt this. I just wanted to use him as a frame of reference of what was supposed to be my achievement, my goal into a professional career in the industry as a sculptor. Well, at this point we starting to block some ideas. As I said at the beginning, this video is a work in progress, even for me while I was there. It's not just for you watching and see where it goes. All this, since I started to sculpt, while I was sculpting, sometimes I was kind of wasting time doing some process I knew wasn't going to be necessary, but I was doing it anyway because eventually it would have given me some idea, some inspiration, some directions that could have helped me to find what was the real look that I was going for. So I tried many different things, but each one of this, even if it's not going to be the process that will bring to the end, it's still important to, for me it was still important to show it, because you can see, okay, so he's done this part in this way, then you don't see it anymore. because all the layers of different techniques and experimenting things on the sculpt, it kind of like overlap on each other, and the very first one they have done, it cannot disappear. But at the same time, you have a more complex sculpt, because it's not just a form and I put a texture. It's not just a ball and I do a couple of scratches or a couple of indentations and then that's it, just texture. There's more into it. Even if you can't see it when the sculpt is finished, it's there. It's been there. It's been affecting every other action that you took on the clay afterwards. So it's not starting from a flat surface. There's something already underneath. So the overlapping on the layers create what is ultimately the end of the sculpt, the final product. So the more you do, the more complex the sculpt becomes, the more interesting the eye get caught to the sculpt, and you enjoy it more, and you feel like a different connection than something that is simple. It's basically like watching or looking at the painting. You look at the painting, there is a line and a dot. Yeah, you might stop there and think, because modern art and the expressions and what is the meaning, but ultimately there's not much to look at. Where if you go and look, I don't know, a painting by Bosch, how you can spend hours there to start to interpret everything and find all the little details and characters and crazy things. So spending a bit more time and develop a sculpt that is more complex, it will help to create a much more interest for the viewer. In this video there's going to be a lot of repeats of techniques and actions, because again, there are times it's going to be in real time, so you can see what's the movement of the sculpting tool on the clay, what is the forms, what is the effects that leaves it. So there are some close-up, there's not an amazing quality, but it's all to try to make you understand what is it that I'm doing, because in the video it's hard to tell. I'm organizing some sculpting courses, and I'm really excited about that, because I can show and try to explain very close how to make these textures, how to get to this result. I really hope within the video you can get this feeling, you can understand what is the way that I use, what's the technique, the sculpting tools. I said it previously in another video that most of my sculpting tools I made them myself, or I modified them from an original sculpting tool that I bought, that I bought. Well, some of them have been given as presents, so eventually when I realized, you're not using a sculpting tool, it's been there for years, you don't know what to do with it, you kind of try to reinvent it and modify it in a way for something that you need, because a lot of times I'm sculpting a character, I need to make a texture, and everything that I got is not working. So what do I need to make that texture? What do I need to make that sculpt? And if I can, I make the sculpting tool and I use it. And then eventually I realize that sculpting tool is good for other things too, and then becomes my favorite one. Every few years there's always a sculpting tool that is my favorite, because I discover, this works well for texture, for wrinkles, or this is good. For example, I designed one when we were working on Aquaman 2, and I made these sculpting tools to make scales for the fish characters that were in the council. And then I realized that sculpting tools actually was really good. I use it very much for refine lines, start to make wrinkles, because it's curved and it's not a straight line or like a square angle. It's curved. Every time that I use it, it doesn't just scratch the surface, it already rounded up the edges, and it already starts to make something that look like a more three-dimensional wrinkle. There's a lot of refining going back and forward in this video. As I said at the beginning, I was designing, deciding what to do and what feeling I was looking for while I was sculpting. So a lot of things have been changing. Like for example here now I've been covering a lot of bits and parts that I've done before, but as I said at the beginning, every step, even a step that can be maybe in hindsight useless or pointless, and that step helped you to reach that goal that you wanted at the end. And that is very important. So instead of sitting down there and looking at your sculpt and think, what am I going to do now? I don't know what I'm going to do, and keep thinking and doing searching online. Yeah, maybe searching online can help, but it's always risky, because if you don't know what to do and you see something from someone else, you might risk to go and copy straight as what it was, and at that point it's not your creation. So it's always have to be some sort of like inspiration, and then you don't look at it that anymore. You just stay with the feeling, the emotion that left to that part that you saw in that picture, and say, okay, I know what I'm doing. Go back on the sculpt and then create your own version of what that reference gave you. At this point, you can tell that the forms are really harsh, but I like to use the sculpting tools flat and going from up and down, and try to feel slowly the inside and the crevices. In this way I have just a more gentle version of what I had before, but at the same time I don't lose what I've done completely. The rake tools that I'm using, I always made it myself, because it depends on what kind of like effects I want. And then after that, often I just leave all those little bits of clay there. Instead of brushing it off, I press it down. Because if you do it over and over again, you have a more complex texture. So you have, instead of like, for example, doing a spattering with a clay mixed with white spirit, or using like a syringe or a brush dipped in white spirit and clay, you just do this. So you have a start of that feeling of texture. There will be more about it at the end of the video. I covered basically everything that I do on sculpts in this one. That's why it's this long. And here we are sculpting the butt of the spider. I have no idea why I did the butt like that. Oh yeah, okay, now I closed that. That's good, that's better. So it was very difficult, I have to say, it was very difficult to sculpt and try to do something symmetrical like that and make a video. It was always diagonally to the sculpt, so it's not as symmetrical as I wanted. But I think even for creatures it's nice like that. Like a bit of a symmetry, you can't really tell. I shouldn't have said it actually. So these are all the scales. You will see in the video that things gonna get changing, because again I was just making it along while I was sculpting, and actually I like the testing and seeing how it goes, and then evolve. The sculpt literally evolve while I'm sculpting, and that it kind of, I think it gives a better feeling of organic and natural, instead of like studying it and planning it ahead too much, you know, like when you think too much. It's kind of like when movies now, they have all these creatures and they have all these characters, and when you're behind the scene you realize how much thinking there's behind something that could have been so much more simple. And I'm not saying because, oh, I know everything, I know what people likes. I know partially what people likes because a lot of people that do this job is a fan of this industry, is a fan of horror movies, sci-fi, fantasy, and we love to see crazy things, we love to see cool stuff, and we love to see more than humanoids. And often just humanoids is the most preferred option when to do characters in movies, because it's cheaper, it's faster in a certain way, because it doesn't require like big molds, big runs of material, big use of materials, and you kind of like making like a bland version of what it could have been. Bolt tools. Bolt tools is going to be your best friends when you realize exactly how to use them. I always been a bit unsure about that. I didn't know what to do with them. Then one day a colleague and friend showed me like a technique that, I don't know if he made that technique or he saw it from someone else, but he showed me how to use the bolt tools to make very tiny veins, instead of using like little worms of clay, put it on top of it and blend the edges, and it takes a long time. He showed me this kind of technique, and then now I'm using for many other things. It's kind of like decorating the cake in a certain way, but you can do it with obviously finer details and a lot of really nice ways. Sculpting and an infinite thing. You can sculpt everything in so many different ways. You can learn one new thing from everyone. Everyone can have an idea and realize, and then you see it and you say, oh, that was genius, why I never thought about that. And it's great. It's great being able to share and to absorb information from other people. So again, I really appreciated that you've been spending all this time watching the video. If you resisted until this point, is already amazing for me. And having the patience to go through all the steps and see how I create every single part of this sculpt. This video originally, it was a total 182 minutes of time lapse, and I managed to cut down to 42 minutes and 26 seconds. I had to remove a lot of things because I realized I over recorded everything, because in my head, when I think about someone who wants to learn, someone who wants to get as many information as possible from professionals, they want to see everything. Like if I had the chance to be able to see in real time other professional sculptors that were doing like big movies, if I could have seen them working on one sculpt for, I don't know, 8 hours, 10 hours, I would have watched it, because I was eager to learn. I was eager to know, how do you do this, how do you do that, and then watching over and over and over again. So in my head I was thinking, oh, I'll record everything, then I'll make a video. Then I didn't realize how long it was going to be, so I cut off so much to try to get to the minimum necessary, let's say, to learn and understand each step. I love to use a blowtorch when I'm sculpting, and when I'm doing texturing I always love to use a blowtorch, because it softened down everything very quickly. On Monster Clay it works amazingly, and it kind of like gets you to almost like a close point to an end. It's very important now when you see Now, using the ball tools, putting the clay in between all the crevices and all these parts is very important to do that, because once you finish the sculpt and you pour the silicone will go absolutely everywhere, and it will go underneath everything. And if you haven't filled it up and there's spaces in between, there's space underneath, the silicone will go there, rip off the clay when you open it. And the biggest issue is that you will have to trim away the silicone without knowing exactly how it's going to be on the other side. So it might be that you get rid of a bit of the sculpt, or you trim it not enough, or you trim the wrong part because maybe that part was a part that you needed, but because it was confused by other pieces of silicone, you don't know what exactly you're doing. So it's very important that when you have overlaps of clay, and after you create like forms like the mouth of the spider, it's really important that with other sculpting tools and a little bit of clay, you go and fill up all the undercuts. When you're sculpting a form, like for example the legs or arms of the spider, you can see that it's never just a tube. It's never just a tube with a couple of parts that come out. There's a lot of layers. There's a lot of lines, almost like muscles, and there's a skeleton. There's always more research into the forms and the shape. Not on the bum. I wanted to keep there a little bit more simple. I didn't want to go too crazy. The complexity comes with the details, and I think it was enough to kind of like balance it out. Because ultimately, if you do, for example, the body, the arms and the legs, or the legs, in a way that is complicated in a certain way, and then you do the rest of the body that is the same or similar, it becomes all one thing. And it is, unless you do like a different paint job, but it's all one thing. It's almost like there's not been much research into it. In my opinion, kind of lazy. So what you want to do is trying to find different way, different texture that together work with the sculpt and with the design. There's no end to detailing and texturing. You can do a layer on top of a layer on top of a layer, and going finer and finer and finer, smaller sculpting tools. And this is what I like to do, because ultimately when you arrive to the point where you have all these different layers of forms and volumes that have been carved and sculpted together, then you use the rec tool that you see that is made out of acupuncture needles. They will blend all together, almost like a rendering, and it becomes all one. So you have different forms, different textures, but there's one last texture that will be gone all over everything, that it makes it all be together. So there's one connected texture that will be all over everything, and underneath you have all the other different forms. This is the sculpting tools that are designed for Aquaman 2, and this was perfect for scales, because I managed to make it in a way that it became like a module that I could repeat over and over again. These ball tools, absolutely love them. I got so many. I got doubles, a few of them, because I always lose them, or some I keep at home, some I put in the workshop, so if I have to work at home again. Here's another example how put more layers, more forms, more volumes, and more intricacy in the sculpt, bring more complexity in the shape and the final sculpt. I could have left it smooth and just make it like a rough, quick texture of some sort, but you bring those two lines and it becomes something else. It's not just that part of the exoskeleton that comes out, and then on top of that you bring other lines, other wrinkles, other details, and then that's it, because there's no space anymore and I run out of small. The sculpting tools, this is some of my smallest ones. So yeah, that's it. But no, actually no, here you go, you add another bit, you make it a little bit more, less a straight line and more curved. In this side I use a different sculpting tool to show like you can achieve similar result with other sculpting tools. You don't always have to be using the same, especially because that one is this other sculpting tool, but you can achieve the same results in different way. I just like to make my life easier, so I like to create sculpting tools that do exactly what they need to do, instead of having like 4 or 5 sculpting tools and just working with them. A nice crisscross when you do this kind of details is always nice, because it brings a bit more of complexity and organic feeling to the overall look of the texture. You see, I've been over on this part quite a few times and it changed over and over and over again, and a lot of this details go and almost like nullify what was before. But I like to go through this whole process. I like to change it and have this feeling of cracks on cracks on cracks, and it becomes more complex. And it's easier to achieve there if you go over and over and over without thinking too much of what you're doing, just following the flow and enjoy each step and find different ways. A nice way to explain this way of sculpting, this way of interpret a nice way to describe this technique that I'm using, this way of sculpting, this flow of shapes and forms. It's almost like if you picture foam in the bath and the way how it spins and you move it. It has that nice and almost relaxing And here we are on the other side. We're carving some more details of the front part of the legs, getting to the end tip. It's been a long process. There's been a lot of repeating the same movements over and over again, and I simplified this video a lot. It was a long video. I was thinking about putting on Patreon as like the whole thing, because ultimately if you pay a subscription on a channel, you want to know and you want to see more than you can. YouTube is different. YouTube is more for like quick things. So if you're still here watching, you're a brave person, and I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for doing it. We're going fast here because we are covering, testing and changing things, and there's a lot of repeat of different techniques and steps. Like at this point I realized that it was nicer if there was more, and again I always add more and more details, more layers, more levels, because it's more complex, it's more interesting, there's more to look at, it's more exciting. So here again, another layer of texture on top of what exists already, and then more details. Never stop. Honestly, you can never stop. You can spend months on a sculpt. Unfortunately, I don't have that amount of patience, so I stop after a certain point. But at least I get to that level that make me think, okay, I've done enough. It looked good enough. There's one problem for me and for many others, because I've been talking with other sculptors, other professionals, and there's always a question: is it good enough? Am I good enough? And it needs to be good enough for you, but often is not enough, and that is a big question. It's a big question that nobody really can answer, because you might think you're not good enough, but for others you are good enough, and you might not be good enough, but who knows? It's always important to carry on, never stop fighting. And here we're changing the center part, because I realized that basically the end bits, when they were overlapping, the idea of the design, I think it was good, but the realization of the overlap of the parts and put it together and try to find a way to make it work, I would have to cut in half the end of the arms, and I wasn't really happy the way how it looked. So I thought, actually, I'll make something that is more like Giga, more like Alien. You have this kind of like symmetry in the position, and feels actually looking at this video now, I realize it feels more like an insect, where the other one was almost like someone who was waiting for something. Here, for example, I'm trying to get texture with just the texture of the sculpting tool, and you can see that when you leave it rough, when you use the blowtorch, the result is more organic. It's not planned, it doesn't require too much time. You just need a little bit of effort, a little bit of thinking, and that's it. Then the blowtorch does the rest. That's why I absolutely love Monster Clay, because you can get these results very quickly. You don't have to worry too much about how to achieve that. You just cover away and blowtorch, cover away and blowtorch, cover away and blowtorch, and look how nice it looks. Organic, and it almost feels like cheating, because it feels like, oh, this is too simple, it should be more complicated. But why should it? This is some more bolt tools action, and actually using from the old process, where previously I was using other sculpting tools to soften it down and round it up, or I carved away in a different way. But this one, for example, you can see is a different way, because when I move the clay, I'm moving from left to right, and I don't get rid of everything. I just repurpose the clay that I'm moving around. In this case, I'm using the bolt tools to refine the edges, almost like drawing the black line in a comic book. It took a really long time to clean up everything. There have been times I thought, I can't do this anymore, it was enough. But you need to power through, and you get it done. You have to. So at this point I was doing the face, and I realized that the clay eyes weren't working. It's never good to have like clay eyes, mostly because every time you go around there you have to reshape to make sure you don't ruin them. And if you find the right shape, that is nice, but you can ruin it very quickly. So at this point I pre-prepared some epoxy ridge dies that I just made by hand. I didn't do anything like too fancy. I created a space with the Bose tools, pressed them in, and that's it. I put like 6 of them, 3 different sizes, and I didn't have to worry about anything. I could clean up the edges, I could clean up the part where they touch each other with the clay, and it was so much more simple. And then you will see that I'm gonna do even with the mouth, with the spikes, because even there it was something that needed to be done rigid. More and more texture, finer and finer and finer. There's many different kind of sculpting tools and rec tools. I think I need a video where I'm going to show all my sculpting tools, how I use them and how I made them. I don't know if someone is interested into this kind of videos. Please let me know in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe. I would really appreciate that. And here we are making some more forms, refining shapes, and try to keep it more interesting as possible without ever stop from saying, oh yeah, that's good enough. I could have gone a lot further into the detailing and everything, but I thought for a tumbler and for this kind of video sculpting, it's pretty good. There's gonna be videos and sculpt in the future where I'm gonna go absolutely nuts with details and see how far we can push it. This is gonna be the base in the sculpt, and I'm using a sculpting tool that is made out of armature wire, like metal wire, twisting itself and give it a shape of a loop. So in this way, give me that kind of multiple carved filling texture on the clay. And I'm creating a spider web, almost like it's a cocoon. Like this is the prey that the spider is holding. I did few different tests before this. I didn't bother to show it because there were big fails and I didn't like it. It took me a long time to find a way to do it, like something that is fast and practical, and it looked good. Here's I applied the resin teeth. I literally just make this putty, and then with the sandpaper I shaved it until I got that shape. Some more texturing, using another sculpting tool that I made by myself. I don't remember out of what, but it's a really fine wire that I put it all together and it just gives like a fine rough scratch everywhere. And it's really hard, so it goes everywhere without problem, so you can see exactly what you're doing. It's very important at the end of a job, at the end of a sculpt, that you go, when you think you're finished, you go and revise everything and go and clean up some of the edges, intensify, almost like adding contrast to a picture, because what you want is that when there's a light, some of the details are more visible than others. It makes them more interesting. And ultimately, not just there, when you're painting, if you have a defined line between every form that you want to paint in a certain way, it helps the painting. Because otherwise, if the 2 parts of clay where you were supposed to pull like a scratch that is more defined and divide the 2 parts of clay is rounded, when you put the clay, you have to create with painting that separation, and more often than not look bad, so you want to avoid it. So we are almost at the end of the video. Thank you very much for lasting this long. I really appreciate that. I really hope you enjoyed it. There are gonna be many more videos in the future. The next one is going to be an old age makeup from start to end. I'm pretty sure that one is going to be a long video too, like this one, because it took me a long time to make it. There will be another one making an old age hands prosthetics. Don't miss that one either. At this point, you use a white spirit. This is a technique that I developed in the last few years. You put the white spirit just in some parts. When you use the blowtorch, and the clay absorbs the white spirit, the clay becomes, with heat, smoother than the rest of the clay, because obviously it's softened up by the white spirit. Try it. I use it a lot for wounds, cuts, or areas I want to shine than others. And then at the end, apart from those parts that I stippled, I use this white spirit and a brush, and I give all over that, so I get this nice, like an extra layer of texture. Here's our final result. I'm quite happy with that. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.